So this is how insulin works. There's 4 different kinds. There's rapid acting, short acting, intermediate, and long acting. So for rapid acting, we're going to start with this. So Novolog, that's a fast acting or rapid acting insulin that you use before a meal. It has a very quick onset, really short peak, and the duration is relatively short. Rapid acting insulin, like Novolog, is used 2 ways. First, it's used before meal insulins. So that's the blood sugar checks that you're doing in the morning, that you're bringing up before breakfast, that you're putting in for the day, and then you're going to retest after the meal. But that is the insulin that you give based on their sliding scale, for the most part, that you get in that morning blood sugar. And because it happens so quick, test questions usually always address that you have a patient that you walk into the room after giving their morning insulin and you find that their meal hasn't been touched. They are shaking and diaphoretic. What condition do you think this is? That'd be hypoglycemia. So that's the rapid acting. And so I always think when you have rapid acting insulin, you got to have sugar in the body in the form of a meal. It'll drop that sugar fast. And how I looked at that, here's just a little chart, and each one of these represents an hour. So in a day period, rapid acting, 15 to 30 minutes, onset and duration goes between usually 1 to 5 hours that it's in the body. Second, short acting, so regular insulin. This usually has an onset between like an hour and a half or so, and it peaks to about 8 hours. Some of those, the test questions usually indicate that you have a patient who 4 hours after a meal feels hypoglycemic. Basically what would it be? A lot of those test questions indicate when they're coming down from their duration here. Third one, intermediate, the NPH. Easiest way to remember the intermediate is, for the most part, those are the ones that you have to hand roll, that are mixes, 70-30 or whatever. And you can see that their onset is slow. It takes, 6 hours, 5-6 hours, and it goes to about 18 before it wears off. And the other one is long acting. So this is your Lantus. If you notice, there is no peak on the chart here. It's hard to show that, but there's no peak for Lantus. It has an onset and it just stays. So it starts working around 2 hours and it stays working until about 24. Because of that 24-hour duration, they're all taken at bedtime. So usually people take their Lantus at bedtime, and all the way next day, it'll be right at bedtime again, and it stays at a fairly therapeutic peak level, or a therapeutic level. So for the most part, when you have high blood sugars on patients, it's usually because they didn't take enough rapid-acting insulin, or regular or intermediate. For the most part, it's just that diet control issue. So think of how insulin works. So for the most part, I just made a series of doors. It's something I just came up with. So rapid acting is basically imagine when you walk up to a store and you walk in, you don't even do anything, the door just opens up. That's what happens with the insulin. The insulin just grabs any sugar and says, let's go, and immediately starts working. And so that it works fast. You don't have to wait. You don't have to do anything. It just happens right when it gets into the body for the most part. 15 minutes is pretty quick, So that is rapid acting. The other point with rapid acting insulin is this is what you are usually, for the most part, with some of the pumps. So in a diabetic pump, you don't have a Lantus. They just have an ongoing steady stream of rapid acting insulin. It could be 0.25 units, a minute or something, or an hour or whatever it is. Actually, a minute would be really high, but so it just has that continuous flow. That's why you only need one type of insulin if you are in a pump. Second, like short acting, is basically it has that slower than rapid peak, or the onset. So it's basically a door without any locks. It just takes a minute. You got to walk up. You actually have to do something, and it's just this little slower process than rapid, but it's still fairly quick. So regular insulin, a lot of times you put that on drips, IV drips, because it works and it just kind of keeps the patient going in that steady rate. And then intermediate is the NPH. Those think of their peak and onset and duration with kind of a series of some locks. It takes a while to get in there. That door takes a while to open, but once it gets open, you can stay there for a while and you're safe. And you can relock the doors and keep everyone inside that you want. It's just safer. And long-acting Lantus is basically, think of a bank vault. I remember having a job where you deposit money in the safe, and when you wanted to open it, you had to wait a certain period of time. And coincidentally enough, I had to wait 2 hours for that safe to open, so it's pretty much the same thing. So it just takes an hour or two to get that Lantus going, and then once it's open, you can just stay open all day. And then at, at the end of that 24 hours, you'll have to shut it again, or the alarm will go off. So it's pretty much the same thing. So you can just have that door kind of open all day. So when we're looking at insulin, grab a marker here while I do this. But so when you're looking at insulin and you're looking at food, so this is usually when your sugar, you go off your blood sugar. When you take these, you test your sugar. If it's high, then you look at that sliding scale for that rapid acting, and that's how you adjust the rapid acting. But let's go on the other hand, on the other side of it. Let's say you're going to do that morning sugar and it's low, and it's 52. And for that patient, and for our lab values, usually under 60 is considered hypoglycemic, but so he's at 52. You want to hold that insulin. Don't give it. You need to get that sugar up. So the first thing you would do is, talks about a simple sugar, like an orange juice. Just gonna put that in there. What does orange juice do? Orange juice does the same thing. It quickly goes in, just like this, and it quickly peaks, and it quickly loses duration. So that patient will have a good spike in blood sugar after that orange juice, after that cracker, but within an hour or so, then the blood sugar will start dropping again. So then you'll need to give basically another snack. So think of something a little bit more complicated, like let's say a sandwich. So you give them we'll just go here and we'll just say a sandwich. We'll just say cheese. We'll just do a cheese sandwich. Same kind of thing. You'll have that, kind of immediate release of some carbs will get in there. Then after a while, it'll start dropping off again. And usually after a couple hours, you're going to be hungry again. Your blood sugar will be lower. So think of something really complicated that, could last a lot longer. So, imagine like a huge feast. And you're having, potatoes, and you're having, all the starches, and that kind of stuff will peak up, but then, that kind of stuff will sustain you longer. So you have fruits, vegetables, everything on your plate, and you just eat it, and it'll last longer. So think of that with as far as diet goes, what you're planning, what you want to do. If you want to slowly raise that insulin, or that blood sugar, this will be it on the test questions. It's always orange juice, crackers, but then the other follow-up questions we're going to talk about is after that initial peak, your patient's hungry again, so you have to get that orange juice, and then you have to eat a meal. That's the big thing. And then it also talks about when it comes down to insulin, testing your sugar. And so, frequent checks, whether it's every hour, every 4 hours. But just to remember the different types of insulin, how they work, and the duration of it all.